Right now the wall is being erected, as you can see here. We felt as though it was really important to include the separation barrier, as it's such a symbol of the Israeli occupation. And what we want to recreate in this event is how the Palestinian farmers have to pass through this wall every day, or whenever they're allowed to get to their own fields.
Zatoun was started in Toronto by Robert Massoud, who is a Palestinian Canadian, and as a Palestinian he wanted to be activist in some way, and he started this. So he's actually the one that spends time in Palestine meeting the farmers and making sure it was fair traded by the Swiss and so on. To keep a viable income is olives and olive oil, so it's terrible for them to have the wall, you know, chopping away their trees, burning trees, stealing trees, and the soldiers, you know, tried to come to help a little bit, but really it's not a viable solution to the settlers, who just are able to have free reign and take over the trees and the land. So the farmers really appreciate the solidarity and getting their oil out. Also, the oil is a very spiritual thing. I mean, in all of our religions, the olive oil, whether it's for christening or Hanukkah for Jews, or you know, for them, olive oil is a very sacred substance. So it's very meaningful to them to be able to produce it.
There's one village that we feature in the film that is it's a very old village where people actually still live in caves. It's in this one area, the West Bank, and staying in that village with that community that has lost access to its water and much of its grazing land, has had a number of its caves filled in and forced to move. Just that experience was so different from most of Palestine and most of the West Bank that it really had an impact on me, on people who are living with virtually nothing are still facing these kinds of pressures, and that had a big impact on
me. We had wanted to have a separation barrier because the idea was to recreate the experience. This was the original idea, was to actually recreate the experience of the Palestinians that have to access their farmland but cannot. So therefore we created the tickets as permits with a few of our case studies on it. You know, we wanted to have this wall where people would actually cross through the wall, check their permit at the door, and go inside. The controversy that we did have was surrounding the soldiers. And so what we had wanted to do was have Israeli soldiers standing at the door to check the permits. We had controversy even before it went to security. We had controversy even just talking about it amongst our group. Some people said, you know, I know people that are soldiers and they're good people, and you know, so you have this kind of controversy, you have this kind of talk. For us, we wanted to push forward with the soldiers because it wasn't, again, an Israel versus Palestine type of event. It was an event recreating reality. And the reality is the wall exists. And the reality is soldiers are there and they're checking permits. So this is what we wanted to do. However, the Concordia security decided that it would be too controversial to do that. And so just a couple of days before the event, we received an email saying that we couldn't have military uniforms, that military attire wasn't permitted, and that they strongly suggested that we not have the wall.
No access to the borders, no access to the sea. The world began to see this unavoidable stamp. The most crowded place on earth was now a concentration camp. Israeli jet fighters bombed Gaza from the air, and they kept out the supplies needed to rebuild and repair. They kept out the convoys of humanitarian aid, anemic children going hungry, crushed and burned in bombing raids from around